Hi, I'm back. It's been a couple of weeks and a lot has happened. This episode, we're still talking about lighting. It's such a critical part of the storytelling process, I think. It's not just to make your images look beautiful. It is for that. You don't want your viewers clawing their eyes out because your images look terrible and like home video. It's all about achieving that nice cinematic look that we're all after. But it's also part of the storytelling process. It's one of the tools in your tool belt for conveying information to your audience. How you've lit the scene can tell the audience how they're supposed to feel, how your characters feel, and what's happening in the scene without any dialogue, without having to tell them anything. Just the way it's lit can really convey a lot if you master it. And so I'm going to keep working on it, and hopefully I'll get really great at it someday. I'll talk you through some of the new gear purchases that I've made. That part's always fun, I think. At least for me. And I'll show you some of the new video results using the new gear and a lot of the lessons learned from the last attempt I made at this. I did a lot more studying online. Some of the great YouTubers out there are really helpful and post a lot of good information, and I've got a great buddy, Steven, who's a lighting professional, and I picked his brain a little bit, showed him some of my last results, and I think I made a little bit of progress on this next attempt. So I'll show you what I've done, and we'll go from there. First, let's take a quick look at last week's video and the final product there, and just a quick review of what the lessons learned were, and then I'll show you how I applied them. I really struggled shooting during the day because the image was just way overexposed, and so the way I solved that was just by shooting at night. The first key step that I planned to make was to incorporate flags or other light shaping devices just to prevent the light from spilling out all over the room. I just needed to control the direction of the light a little bit more. The second key step was to incorporate ND filters to reduce the amount of light coming into the lens. That can help prevent the image from being blown out or overexposed. Okay, so let's review the gear that I purchased. I might have gone a little bit crazy, but I think it's a good thing. Everything that I purchased is stuff that'll grow with me and I'll have for a very long time, and I think it's going to help me grow into a much better filmmaker. So, first. Alright, so let's jump into the shoot. We'll start with my daytime shoot. I was actually pretty happy with it overall. I was actually able to leave that lamp on, which splashed a little bit of warm light onto the wall, just adding a little bit of visual interest in the background. So I was pretty happy about that. And I just kind of leaned into that window being the motivating source of light. I just opened up the shutters and I let that be my key light. The two key changes I made on this shoot were ND filters and the lens. The ND filters allowed me to keep the aperture open, which gave me that nice depth of field. But I had made the decision to move back to the couch instead of sitting in the chair in the previous version of this. So the background didn't get as much blur to it. The lampshade maybe has a little bit of softer edges, but that's about it. So I put that plant up in the front, and that's nice and blurry. So you can really kind of get the sense that there's a third dimension there. From the viewer's perspective, it kind of looks like the plant is closer to the viewer. And I think that really helps to sort of sell the three-dimensional space. Finally, there's a subtle backlight to the right of the subject, in the hair and on the right shoulder. It's kind of subtle in the daylight because there's so much light in the room, but I think it is giving me just that subtle little bit of separation from the background, so I thought that worked out pretty well. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this image. For a daylight shoot, I think it looks pretty good, and I think I'm kind of getting the message across that I want to get across. So let's talk about the backlight for a minute. In episode 1, I really liked the backlight, but it was just spilling all over the room. I got the nice separation that I was looking for, but it was causing me to fight with being overexposed on everything else. I didn't want to lose the backlight in this version of it, but I just needed to control it a little bit more. So what I did to solve that was I used a C-stand to extend a light pretty much directly over my head and behind me. And then I used the black wrap cinefoil to make a snoot, or just like a tube, that I could wrap around my light and direct the light so it's really shining just on me and nowhere else. So it's not blowing out my whole image or overexposing anything, but it's giving me that backlight and just that little bit of separation, which I really liked. I really like this method, and I think I'll definitely use it again. I also shot this one at night, and maybe it's just personal preference, but I really dig this one more. I like the darker shadows on the side of my face. I feel like that really makes the image more intense. And then I kind of like the framing. It's a little bit different in this one. I'm sort of shoved over closer to that darker side of the frame, which I feel like just adds to some of the anxiety in the shot. And then that kind of blown out, overexposed lamp, I kind of like it. I think it adds to the drama of the scene, and it sort of matches the anxiety that the character seems to be feeling in the scene. So I feel like it kind of worked. I focused on using the lamp as my main motivating light source, so most of my lights came from that direction just to sort of punch up what the lamp was doing, and I feel like that kind of worked for the scene and gave me a really nice look. The backlight, I think, really popped in this scene. You can really get that nice rim and the nice separation from that darker side of the scene. Overall, I think these two shots have really come a long way since episode 1. A little practice on my part, and then some of the right gear for the job, I think made all the difference in the world. C-stands, C-stands, C-stands. I can't say enough about how much I'm in love with these things. I honest to God think that I was more excited to get C-stands than I was to get my first car. They were awesome, and they added so much efficiency and flexibility to the shoot. Can't wait to use them on the next one. The lens I'm in love with, the 35mm that has an f-stop of 1.8. I think that adding that control over the depth of field made a huge difference. ND filters made the daytime shoot possible. There's no way I was getting that image without the ND filters, so I think they're a must-have. And then the black wrap cinefoil, I'm kind of falling in love with it. It gives me so much control and versatility in shaping the light, and on a budget, when you can't afford barn doors and flags and all of that, the cinefoil stuff is a pretty cheap way to get a lot of control over shaping your light. Highly recommend it. If you're an experienced filmmaker and you've got some tips to share, please drop your wisdom down in the comments. We're all here to learn and grow as filmmakers. If you're a newbie like me and you don't have $1,000 to spend, I think the best thing that you could do for your money is ND filters and the black wrap. They're both cheap, and they both make a huge difference in controlling the light. And that's really seems to be the name of the game to get that good cinematic look. And I think you can do it using a lot of daylight and using the lights you have if you can control what comes into the lens and what actually hits your subject. C-stands are definitely expensive. If you can't afford those, I think you could get a similar effect with less than $100 worth of PVC and a good assortment of fittings. It won't be as efficient, but it'll work. Also, I think the cardboard idea to use as flags has merit. I haven't totally figured it out yet, but if I do, I'll let you know. If you have any DIY hacks that you're using for your filmmaking, share them in the comments below. If you've made some videos, link to them. I'd love to check them out personally. I'm here to grow and learn as a filmmaker. And I take that seriously, so I'm going to document this journey along the way. I want to throw a quick shout out to some of the other YouTubers out there who have really put some great content out that I personally studied between episode 1 and 2 to grow over the last few weeks. And I think I've grown quite a bit with their help. So Peter McKinnon obviously is the juggernaut in this space. He puts just a ton of content out. Really great tips, and he's just a super motivated guy, and I love watching his stuff. I feel like I learn a little bit every time. Epic Light Media, if you haven't checked them out, highly recommend it. They do some really great DIY stuff. They show you how to use the expensive gear and all the way down to no gear at all, and do basic lighting setups. I learned the fundamentals like key lights, backlights, fill lights, and how to set those up and get the most use out of them. Finally, Danny Gevirtz, really talented young filmmaker out there. He's posting a lot of great content on the practical application. So he actually shows you how he sets up a lot of his shoots and does a lot of behind the scenes stuff to show you what he did and how he set it up, what gear he's using. Really like following that guy. And he's super down to earth and easy to watch his videos. So definitely go check those guys out. Subscribe to their channels. It helps them out, and I promise you're going to learn a lot from them. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again, guys. I'm Eric Ryan, and I want to be a filmmaker.